You're listening to Trek FM.
Hello everyone, and welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM celebration of 50 entire years of Star Trek. I'm your host, Daniel Proulx, for today, and with me is...
Brandon Mutala. Now, I don't know if you really are who you are, Daniel. Do you mind if I take a blood sample?
No, you can't take a blood sample. I didn't sign up for this nonsense. And if you didn't hear our, I wouldn't say a debate, but our conversation about that, listen yesterday too, because we talked about this as well. But we're here to cover 2 episodes today, and we're going to be doing...
Paradise Lost and Prototype.
Yes. So let's start with Paradise Lost. This is the one where we get to see the Defiant go up against an Excelsior-class ship. And that's it. Nothing else important happens. Nothing else at all. No, this is the one. This is the follow-up to Homefront, where the changelings have infiltrated Starfleet. So, Brandon, how do you feel about the closing to the excellent Homefront?
So I want to continue our conversation from yesterday here, because Joseph Cisco has a pretty rapid change of heart after this blackout. And I don't buy that after his first reaction. So I kind of want to talk about that, and I'm glad we talked about it yesterday, because it doesn't seem to me like he's the kind of guy that's just going to get scared over a blackout.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like the way he... I guess what's succumbed to fear is what the idea is there, but he seems like more of a tough man than that, especially since it was only like not very long of a time that the power was down, and it's not like, you know, they still had other things going on. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly that I don't like that happens.
Yeah, I'm okay with how it was in the first episode, and it gave us a lot to talk about yesterday and a lot to think about. But even Cisco's like, man, that's weird that you're like this. And he's like, oh, that blackout sure scared me. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. No, I don't like that very much.
Anyway, moving on from there. So in this episode, we're getting a lot of intrigue into, what's really going on here. And Cisco and Odo are doing the investigating, and they find out that there's some interesting stuff with this Red Squad and how they were used to actually create that blackout, and how this Admiral Layton turns out to be, surprise, surprise, another Badmiral.
It feels cheap, doesn't it?
Well, it's only the second Badmiral we've had. I'm sure that's only the second Badmiral, right?
Yeah.
There haven't been that many. It's not like there's been 47 Badmirals or anything like that.
Nice. It does. To me, it feels cheap because you have this interesting conversation happening. You have this interesting conflict, is what I was looking for, between the president and Layton, and it makes it, to me, it would have been so much better if it was just that, and maybe Layton does feel the need to take over because of these things, but to me it feels more like a power grab. At the end, he's more of a mustache twirling villain than someone who feels like he can protect the planet better than the president. It just feels like he's the boundaries he's stepping over, the things that he's doing. It's just like, it feels cheap to me that's all it was.
There's a couple of things that I really like in this episode, where when quote unquote Changeling O'Brien there walks up to Cisco and he's talking to him, and he's like, what would happen, what would you think if I told you there was only, what did he say, 4 of us on the planet? Like, there's only 4 of us. It took 4 of us to create this much havoc on your planet. And it's like, that's kind of interesting, you know, because we're starting to see the changelings and the founders in the Dominion and how they play the long game. It's like, look, we don't even have to invest anything into this war. We can just let them destroy themselves and then walk in and take everything over. Like they play the long game in chess. They're like 10 moves ahead of us. And I think that's really, really, really interesting. I'm interested, like, why they would give that information to Cisco, you know, like, but, you know, it gives us something to think about as an audience. But it's like, by the way, there's only 4 of us here, and good luck.
Yeah, why would you... I had the same thought. I'm like, I really like this conversation between Cisco and the Changeling, although I'm also a little curious as to why Cisco wasn't trying to find out more information. Like, he was more, like, angry and upset. Like you're sitting down having this conversation, get as much as you can out of this thing. But yeah, I'm like, why would they even, like, what was the purpose of this changeling going up there to I mean, I guess maybe to like push that paranoia even further, but I'm not really sure if Cisco went around telling everybody that. I feel like that was just something maybe he did, I don't know. But yeah, I just don't know if there's a tactical advantage to giving out that kind of information.
Yeah. So are they lying that there's more than 4? I don't think so. I think it's neat that there would be only 4. I mean, we see it later on in the series as well, how they play this long game. But I mean, beyond that, we got the cool face-off with the Excelsior class ship and some cool visuals.
Yeah, I like that flyover with the Defiant and the Excelsior, especially since they kind of explain that the Excelsior is a little bit beefed up, since that ship is about 100 years old at this point. So it's nice. It's good that they kind of explain that.
Yeah. So the president, what do you think about the president? This guy seems kind of like a coward to me. Like he's easily pushed around.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if we get enough sense from him. I think he's slow to kind of make rash decisions, though. I will say that for him, he isn't. I wouldn't say he's pushed around so much as that he doesn't want to make big, important, sweeping decisions unless he's, given the evidence. Because obviously it wasn't until they showed him all that stuff that he was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. There was an interesting line about him, and I guess this just goes to further Leighton's villainy, because I'm pretty sure Leighton was the one that said it. But he says he's not from this world. He can't love it the way that we love it. And I'm like, that's an interesting bit of xenophobia in there. I was kind of just oddly thrown in there, and I was like, okay. I mean, maybe he could. I don't know. Cisco loves Bajor an awful lot, I think. So why couldn't this guy? But
I think that's showing definitely some of the Admiral's true colors for sure.
Yeah.
So, but they also bring out the point where Leighton says, like, this guy's a good president in peace times. He's not a good president in war times.
Yeah, which I don't know. I that line didn't sit with me well at all.
Really?
Yeah. It just felt like he was, because he's already advocating for war. He's trying to push for a more militaristic kind of outview on things, So, and especially at this point in this series, and you maybe you can correct me because I haven't watched the surrounding episodes. Is it like open hostilities? Has war actually been declared at this point? I cannot remember.
No, not really.
Yeah. So it's interesting because they're not at war. That's what I thought too. But that's okay.
Yeah, it's a good one. I don't think it's as good as the first part, but it's Deep Space Nine and it's awesome, so that's good enough for me.
One thing we didn't mention in the first one that I did want to point this out. Nog. It's cool. It's cool to see Nog at Starfleet and further his storyline as well. And he's a nice little cadet. That's great. I really love the Nog storyline. So,
right on.
All right. So let's say we move on from our Lost Paradise and talk about Prototype. Prototype is the one where we stumble upon a group of robots. And not only robots, but like really old-fashioned-y looking robots. What do you think about this episode, Brandon?
I think this episode is pretty cool. I like this one a lot. And again, it suffers for me of one of those ones that just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And part of it is because, again, it's such a bad name. Like these one-word titles that Voyager has are just so bad. But, I mean, like, this is directed by Jonathan Frakes. And I love the opening scene where we're getting everything from the point of view of this robot, right? And he beams onto the ship, and then we're seeing everything in these glitches and these in and outs of it's just him, and then he gets a view of himself on the monitor. And I really like that. I think it's an intriguing opening for the episode. I think the robots are really, really cool looking in this. You know how they don't have a moving mouth, right? Their voice is really cool, and I think it suits them really well. It's not the voice you're expecting, but I think it works for them very, very, very well. But I think it's a really cool episode.
Yeah, I agree pretty much with everything you just said. That opening sequence is really, really cool, especially the very beginning when we see Voyager kind of coming up and them getting transported. Because that's a view you never get a POV shot of the actual ship coming at you. As somebody technically floating in space. So that's pretty cool. I love the look of the robots. It's very throwbacky to me, to like classic science fiction. And the voices are great too as well. I really enjoy this episode. It's not amazing, but it's fun, and it's got some good stuff for B'Elanna to do. And there's this interesting conversation about the Prime Directive in this episode, which will come up again and again and again, obviously. But and it's basically when do you apply the Prime Directive and when don't you? And I don't know. I felt like B'Elanna had some pretty good points against Janeway. She's like, if he was an organic, would you feel the same way? Or giving these kind of trying to find out where her boundaries are as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like, what are they going to do? Should they help them build more robots? Is that right or is that wrong? I mean, they were designed this way for a reason. So what should we do? They're asking for our help, but they were designed in a specific way. It goes back to that doctor's orders from Enterprise, right? They're asking for help, but in the end they decide to not help them because of the Prime. Well, they don't have a Prime Directive at that time, but
if only there was some sort of directive of a Prime variety we could apply to this situation. Yeah, at the ending of that episode. But also, being a TNG guy, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Data call out here in this. She says Data by name, and that he is an actual person, kind of referencing the events of Measure of a Man and everything else going forward, of course. So that was cool, and that's fun. That it was interesting to me. I was curious how aware, and I'm by no means trying to turn this into a TNG thing, but I'm just, why would Torres be aware of Data? She was only in the academy for a year or two, right before she dropped out, and then she was just part of the Maquis. So I was curious, is he a celebrity? Is there a lot of information being spread around about Data? I was just curious.
That's an interesting question because, is he well known outside of the ship? I don't know. I would say that he probably is because he's unique, right? Even though there's androids every 15 minutes on the original series, he's unique, But that is an interesting question: is how well is he known, and how these adventures, how well are they known outside of their own ships?
But it's like every crew has their unique member, right? So that's I don't disagree with what you're saying because I thought the same thing. But I'm like, well, does that mean that anytime somebody comes across a shape-shifting species, everyone thinks of Odo? I don't know. Is that how it works? Or every time in the future, anytime somebody comes across the Borg, they say Seven. Seven's she's a celebrity Borg. I don't know. It was just something that popped into my head.
I would think it's probably has to do with the fact that he was declared sentient, right? And, with the Measure of a Man, it's probably more to do with that. So, but getting back to this episode here, so this concept of how these robots were built to fight as well, and then the builders aren't there anymore, but they're continuing on with this mission of trying to wipe out the other robot species, and if they were to have these the ability to reproduce more robots, then they would give an advantage over the other robot. I didn't write down the names of the species, but
the builders.
But so I think that's interesting that they're at war for so long, and how they ended up killing the builders, right? Because they tried to turn them off and stop them, and the episode turns out to be quite a bit deeper than you're expecting from the beginning.
Yeah, it is. And it is a really interesting kind of conundrum. What do you do when you find out that these beings are literally just designed for violence? They're just designed to destroy. And you were kind of mentioning, it's kind of got little elements of Private Little War there. Do you bolster one side against the other? How do you deal with that situation? You can't even it out. But, you stumbled across this being. You're now involved. And of course, we didn't mention that they're basically holding the Voyager hostage, forcing B'Elanna to help. So it's an interesting conundrum. Obviously, she's going to do what she can to save Voyager. But it's just kind of an interesting group of questions,
You got it. One other thing that I like about it, I've said this before, I love Neelix. I think he's fun to watch. I don't find him annoying at all. He's so versatile as a character, and he can do so much for you. When he comes in and he tells that story about the Jabalian omelet and needing the extra spice in it and stuff, I don't know, I like that aspect of him where he can come and talk and tell these odd little stories and whatnot. I really enjoyed that scene a lot in the episode.
Yeah, it's okay. There may be an episode coming up where he does something very similar, but to me that one falls flat. But this one, not so bad. All right, is there anything else we may have missed here you want to talk about on either Paradise Lost or Prototype?
No, I'm just still waiting for that blood sample.
Next Tuesday. I'll get it for you next Tuesday. So, all right. Well, if people want to find me, they can get a hold of me on Twitter @OneUpDan. That's the number 1. And what about you, Brandon?
You can find me here on the network with new episodes of Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. You can find me on many episodes of our From There to Here rewatch and some recent episodes of The Ready Room. And join us again tomorrow as we talk alliances and Crossfire.
Crossfire!